Jesus tells the parables of the lost in response to those who criticize him, from Luke 15, 1 through 10. By this time, a lot of people of unquestionable reputation were hanging around Jesus, listening intently. The Pharisees and religion scholars were not pleased, not at all pleased. They growled, "He takes in sinners and eats meals with them, treating them like old friends." Their grumbling triggered this story. Suppose one of you had 100 sheep and lost one. Wouldn't you leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the lost one until you found it? When found, you can be sure you would put it across your shoulders, rejoicing, and when you got home, call in your friends and neighbors, saying, "Celebrate with me, I've found my lost sheep." Count on it. There's more joy in heaven over one sinner's rescued life than over 99 good people in no need of rescue. Or, imagine a woman who has 10 coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp and scour the house, looking in every nook and cranny until she finds it? And when she finds it, you can be sure she'll call her friends and neighbors. "Celebrate with me, I found my lost coin." Count on it. That's the kind of party God's angels throw every time one lost soul turns to God. This is the word of life. Thanks be to God.
Thanks, Rob. So did you get all that? Today, Jesus offers parables about a lost sheep and a lost coin. And if we were to read further in this same passage, we would hear about the parable of the prodigal son. But for today, we're just going to look at the first two. Let's start with the sheep. Sheep are born with a herd instinct, which means that they're not as likely to wander away from the others on purpose as we might think. Yet in Jesus' parable, one does. You can almost imagine the herds here, and one gets a good line of clover or something, and suddenly they're following their nose, eating their way, till they run out of that line of good stuff, and they look up and, the rest of the sheep aren't there. Now, we don't know if that's what they did, but they don't mean to get separated. And now, this particular sheep, hopelessly lost, only knows how to get back if the shepherd comes to fetch them, because that's how their way of living and being works, right? And at this point, Jesus poses a question that says, which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, doesn't leave the 99 in the wilderness to go after the one that's lost until they find it? Okay. At that, if we hold that thought and consider the lost coin as well, a woman has 10 silver coins. The non-message translation tells us those are drachmas, which are significant coins in the day. And she does the same thing that the shepherd does. She loses one, lights a lamp, sweeps the house, searches carefully until she finds it. And arguably the search in this example seems a little bit more plausible than leaving 99 sheep in the wilderness to look for the one coin. I have an image of my couch and pulling all the cushions off and shaking everything out, and it's a little bit more plausible for me. And that makes sense to a point, but then comes her punchline, because the now found coin is celebrated with a party that exceeds the value of the found coin itself. To give this some context, these were stories that were told to a group of highly religious people who fancied themselves as the 99, or the 9 coins, the ones that would never run off, never slip into a couch or underneath the carpet in the car where everything seems to want to go. These were Pharisees and scribes, and they aren't impressed by the idea of expending this kind of excessive time looking for one sheep or one coin. They just don't see it. Through their eyes, the extremes with which Jesus presents these parables and what happens seem beyond extravagant. And, if we sit for a minute, we can imagine ourselves as a Pharisee or a scribe going, who does this? Why would you leave 99% of your livelihood in the wilderness by themselves to go and find the one, when what you really do when you do that is risk the other 99? It just doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to them either. Logic dictates that no one leaves the 99, right? And What sense does it make to call all of your friends and neighbors together for a celebration to find one coin when you'll spend more time planning, inviting, feeding, and cleaning up than the coin could possibly be worth? And frankly, why would you bother looking for it at all if you're just going to blow all that money anyway? Nobody does this, right? Well, that's what we think. So then the question becomes, what is it that we're missing? Because this seems like a really extreme set of examples. If we look at the writer of the gospel, Luke, the parables were written in his day with the intention to focus on repenting and forgiving, partly by weighting the message so that people would either identify as sinners and hold there, or reject the other, which in this case would be the Pharisees or the scribes. Where Luke would direct the listeners of Jesus' time to hear the finding of the lost as the point, those found religious folk of the day would likely have heard the parables as being about the shepherd or the woman, more so than making any connection between the stories, and certainly not connecting to God. So if we start from the idea that maybe these parables are really about the shepherd and the woman and not what was lost, then what do we see? Well, for starters, going with the shepherd, generally they were considered the lowest of the low back in the day. And a woman in this story is an equally strong protagonist. Usually they were associated with a man in their life or something else. So what happens when you look at a shepherd, lowest of the low, who has 100 sheep in their herd? For them to have had that many, they would have been a person of some means. And the woman with 10 drachma would have been equally so, perhaps even owning her own house and having neighbors and friends that also owned their homes. Most of the common listeners in Jesus' day would not have had 100 sheep or 10 drachma, which changes the nature of how the story would be perceived by all of these characters. There was also some question about how a shepherd with 100 sheep would notice just the one. Frankly, it's easier to realize one is missing if there are only 5 or 6 of them. But with a herd of 100, how do they know? And how did the woman come to know that she was missing a coin? And then, rather than brush off what for each of them might have been considered potentially expendable, if they're that well-to-do and they have all of this excess, they put a lot of effort into finding the one sheep and the one coin. Mind you, neither the sheep nor the coin has any particular investment in being found, which also tells us that this is probably about the shepherd and the woman. As a herd animal, the lost sheep might have experienced some angst when looking up and realizing that there wasn't anything else nearby, but beyond that, who knows what they might have been thinking. And the coin is an inanimate object. It doesn't care whether it's in the couch cushion or in the hand of the woman who's looking for it. Which is just to say that in the context of this parable, these two things that were lost already belonged somewhere. Each is something for which the shepherd or the woman, respectively, are also responsible for. All right, if I haven't confused you yet, let's put another layer in. Beyond the notion of Luke weighting these stories with an idea of repentance or defining characteristics of God, one wonders what Jesus intends in putting these stories in front of us. What's the point? That once the lost item is noticed, great efforts should be taken to find it? Or might it be that in diligently seeking to find them, the listener into his stories might realize that they too have lost something, a level of awareness he's trying to create for us, perhaps. And in order to search for something, we have to know it's gone, because why would you stage a search if you didn't know that something was missing? Is it really about what is lost, or the one who's lost something? When we think about the reaction of the shepherd or the woman and the sheer joy they experience and express when they find these lost items, maybe Jesus is inviting us to take a look at joy that we experience when we find something that we've lost. Or maybe, with so much in our lives, perhaps he's asking whether or not we even notice if something is lost, or try to be aware of what we take for granted and what it would take to find what is found. I wonder if he's just asking us to engage in finding rather than simply attending the flock, to be so aware in your tending that you do know when something is absent that you think should be there. To actively seek them and to do whatever seeking we do with joy. To see that something, when something is lost, whether it's a sheep or a coin or a person, that all have a value. And a value that is enough that we should set aside what we're doing to go and find them. And maybe there's a little bit of an invite there to consider how this all fits for us if we feel we're the ones that are lost. It feels a little squishy for me, so let's try some examples. Let's try on the sheep part first. I can remember my first time exploring Port Townsend out on the peninsula, right? And I was with a couple of close friends. And though we knew one another well and we stuck together for some time, we were both exploring the town. And as new shiny things caught my eye, I wandered away from my little herd. And I lost track of where they were. Now, this wasn't all that long ago, so we had cell phones, but do you think I had it with me? I did not. So no cell phone. We hadn't talked about meeting somewhere at a certain time if we split up. So now I'm feeling a little concerned because there's a lot of stores and a lot of places that you can explore in Port Townsend. And so I left behind what was part of our reason for going, which was to do all that exploring, and parked myself on what I thought was a reasonably visible corner. And I'm looking and looking and looking. I probably spent 15 or 20 minutes, nothing. I don't see them anywhere. And I thought, okay, I have a couple of choices here. I can stand here until I finally see them and we leave for the day and lose the opportunities to go and play a little bit, or I can set this down, take a breath, and know that one way or another we would eventually find ourselves together again, and sure enough, we did. Now, we didn't throw a party, but we were pretty excited. And a story that most of us here certainly can identify with, and maybe those of you online, any of us who are parents or have been in charge of little ones when they're very small, you take them to the store, 1 second. You look and you look back and they're not there, right? My version of that would be my son Ryan when he was probably around 2 years old, so he has a few words that he's working with, and he thinks this is a great place. We're in Target with in the clothing space with a whole bunch of these. So, if you have this much space between them, the kid can really hide. And, he's hiding. He thinks that's fun. I'm like, oh my gosh. Looking and looking and looking, and what took just 2 or 3 minutes because, of course, the attendants came and we were looking for feet underneath there, and we find him. But in that moment, I can only imagine the joy that's being described when, in the parable, the shepherd finds their sheep. Make sense? And now let's try on the coin. I know you won't believe this, but I'll try it anyway. So years ago in high school, I got contact lenses after I wore glasses from the time I was 5, got contact lenses by the skin of our teeth, big financial outlay for my folks at the time. And I think I was a junior in high school. And we went on a Boundary Waters canoe trip with the Methodist youth group at the time. And now having the contacts where you get all this peripheral vision and you feel a little more like that. As a teenager, I thought, I'm just going to take them with me. My mom didn't think that was a good idea, of course. I didn't tell her. I wore my SCSI glasses, and as soon as we were out of sight, put those away, put the contacts in, and the only time the glasses came out was when we're in the tent at night. Boundary Waters, clean, clean, clean water, and we come out in the morning, and we're sitting on a huge boulder, and it has little crevices in it and stuff, and there are 3 or 4 of us sitting on the boulder, and I, in my infinite wisdom, thought I'd use the very clean water from the lake to put my contact lenses in. And I'm poised like you do, and it's right there. And then comes just a wisp of a breeze, and guess where it's not now? And I'm like, oh my word. my mom's going to kill me. So we have to look. And so now there are 4 of us scrambling over this boulder, looking everywhere. We're sure that it's somewhere in the lake and making its way to Canada. And we're looking and looking and looking. And about 10 minutes later, I turn around to the closest crevasse that has a little tiny plant growing out of it. And here's the contact floating on the water there. I can identify with the woman with the coin. I'm just saying. Okay. I did not tell my mother about that story, nor did I tell her about a situation at home. I'd gotten them hard contact lenses, so if you blink just right, sometimes they'll snap out. At the time that I was in high school, we had a wringer washer, and we had 2 big rinsing tubs, and I am obeying my mother's request for, or granting her request for help, and I go down and I'm going to help her out. And so I, out of the wringer washer and into the first tub and now into the second, and I've swung it around so that I can catch all those now fairly wrung out clothes and bring them out to hang on the line, right? Over the second rinse tub, I am agitating them a little bit, making sure everything's okay. I blink, and now the contact is in this tub of water. And I'm thinking, or bigger words, I'm like, well, now what am I going to do? I did this nice thing for my mom. I cannot go upstairs and tell her I've lost the contact lens inside this tub of rinse water, and I can't finish what I was sent to do, because who knows, it's going to go through there and it's going to come out looking like a pancake with jagged, you get the idea. Right. So here I am quietly. It's taking way longer than it should, so I'm waiting for Mom to come down and discover my faux pas. I'm quietly moving the clothes, praying that eventually the little guy is going to come to the top, and sure enough, 10 minutes, praying like a crazy woman. And really rejoicing. Why? Because this was a very dear thing. It was a privilege. It was a gift from my parents to allow me to get the contact lenses. I knew the value of that to them and to me. I knew what confidence it gave me to wear them. I knew that if I lost one, I would lose my mom's respect and trust, at least for a moment. So I, like the woman with the coin, I was ready to throw the party. And maybe that helps us get a little better grasp on what's winding through these parables today. Maybe Jesus is asking us to consider how we determine the value we place on what's lost, including a mother's wrath, and what is found. If we view today's stories in the context of a well-to-do shepherd or woman, we might be inclined to think that they would just, it's gone. We're not going to look too far. But the searching in the parables is as real as the searching in the stories that I just told you today. The shepherd isn't pretending to look for the sheep to make himself look good. The woman isn't just putting on an act with her lamp and her broom. What is lost is truly lost. And if we extend the notion of all of this and how it interlocks to God, and put ourselves in the position of the one who is lost, I don't know about you, but I can feel the joy in myself that God would put a hold on the 99 to come and search for me. Right? From Steve Garna's Holmes, Looking. What woman with 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? In the dark mist, in the dingy back alleys, under things, in the dust, she's looking for you. She knows where to find you, even in the waste and the scum of the city of all your plans gone bad. In the shattered desert of your loneliness or exile, in the tangles and brambles of your perceived shame, among the slot machines of your distractions, in the dense fog of your not looking, she knows where you are. You are not some dull penny for spending. You are her dowry, her treasure. You are worth your worth, and she will not give up on you. Always she is looking. Always she is finding. The light you walk by is her lamp. When unthinking and unsayable, unspeakable joy enters your heart, it is her. having found you. Worth the search, yes. Amen and amen.